Right now, the most valuable companies on the planet are racing to sell you their stock. Bigger names, higher valuations, more money than the stock market has ever seen in one place at one time. To some people watching this happen, it looks like the opportunity of a lifetime. Decades of the best companies staying private, growing quietly, finally throwing the doors open so ordinary people can own a piece of whatever comes next. To other people, it looks like something else entirely. A trap. That's the side of this I'm on, and by the end of this video, there's a good chance you will be too. Here's the part almost nobody stops to think about. In a stock market, an open door is never a favor. Every trade needs two sides, a buyer and a seller, which means before you buy what's being sold to you, there's one question actually worth asking. Why are they selling? In an IPO, the people on the other side of that trade aren't strangers. They're the founders who built the company, the early employees who gave it years of their lives, the investors who funded it back when it was nothing. Nobody alive understands these businesses better than they do, and they've seen numbers you and I will never get to see. Then they looked at the most talked about companies of this decade, the ones everyone is desperate to own, and made a decision. They'd rather have your cash than their own shares. Strip away the headlines, and that's what an IPO actually is. A trade with massive information asymmetry, where the seller is the most informed person in the room, and the buyer, by definition, is the least. Right now, that buyer is you. Which raises the real question sitting underneath this entire wave of AI companies rushing toward public markets. If the future really is this bright, why are the people who know these businesses best in such a hurry to sell them to you? There's an answer, and it's a pattern that's shown up right before nearly every major bubble in market history. I call it the Dine and Dash, and if a video that actually explains where this pattern came from, instead of just repeating the hype, is useful to you, subscribing means you catch the next one before it happens, and it genuinely helps this reach more people. In poker, a tell is a small, unconscious signal that gives away what someone actually believes, no matter what they're saying out loud. Markets have tells too, and they don't come from headlines, earnings calls, or the anchors on financial television. They come from watching what people actually do with their money, not what they say about it. Here's one of the clearest tells there is. The average investor sells when they're scared. When the news turns bad, the chart drops, and everyone around them is already running for the exit. Professionals do the exact opposite. Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing and the man who mentored Warren Buffett, put it simply. The intelligent investor is a realist who sells to optimists and buys from pessimists. Translated out of finance speak, that means the smartest sellers in the world don't wait for panic. They sell when everything looks perfect. When the story is loudest, optimism is at its peak, and there's a line of eager buyers begging to get in. That's the exact moment you can extract the most money for whatever you're holding. And that's exactly what the IPO data shows if you know where to look. When markets are booming, companies rush to go public and sell shares to that eager crowd. When markets turn, those same IPOs vanish almost overnight. Not because the companies changed, but because the crowd of eager buyers did. So when a wave of IPOs shows up all at once, all racing for the exit at the same time, that's not a coincidence. That's the top being sold to you, one prospectus at a time. And history doesn't just support this pattern, it's repeated it, almost word for word, at least 3 separate times, right before 3 of the most painful crashes markets have ever seen. Let's go back to June of 2007. Wall Street was booming, credit was cheap, and the 2 founders of Blackstone, Stephen Schwarzman and Peterson, decided it was time to cash in. They took the firm public at $31 a share, and between the two of them, they walked away with roughly $2.5 billion in cash. Schwarzman personally pocketing around $667 million, Peterson taking home closer to $188 billion. A little over a year later, the global financial crisis hit. Credit markets seized, the broader market crashed, and Blackstone stock followed it down hard, eventually bottoming out at under $4 a share in early 2009, a decline of roughly 87% from where it had priced at the IPO. On paper, Schwarzman alone saw more than $6 billion evaporate from his remaining stake. Here's the detail that matters more than the drop itself. None of that money the two founders pulled out in 2007 was ever at risk in the crash that followed. It was already sitting safely in their pockets, converted from paper wealth into real, spendable cash, more than a year before the rest of the market found out what was coming. It's almost like the men running what would soon become the largest alternative asset manager on earth had a very clear read on exactly how much air was in the room and got out of it before anyone else even smelled the smoke. Or go back a little further to the dot-com bubble. In the years leading up to the crash, the number of companies rushing to go public exploded, and 1999 marked the peak. Of every company that went public that year, roughly 51% came from a single sector: technology. Internet companies alone accounted for the majority of that, a concentration that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. Then the year after all of them listed, the bubble popped. Over the following 2.5 years, the Nasdaq collapsed by roughly 77%, and an estimated $5 trillion in market value simply evaporated, gone, as if it had never existed. It took 15 years for the index to climb back to where it had been, and most of the companies that sold stock to the public on the way up never made it to the other side of that crash. A study from the Kauffman Foundation, co-authored by Jay Ritter, an economist so associated with IPO research that people in the field just call him Mr. IPO, tracked what happened to the companies that went public between 1996 and 2000. 10 years later, only 29% of them were still standing as independent public companies. The other 71% had either been acquired, quietly folded, or disappeared entirely. The thing retail investors thought they were buying a piece of the future in. For most of them, 10 years later, it simply no longer existed. Fast forward to 2021, and the same tale showed up wearing a different costume, the SPAC. These are companies that go public before they're actually a company. You raise money from investors first, list it on an exchange, then go shopping afterward for a real business to merge with. It's an empty shell with a checkbook, which is exactly why people in the industry call them blank check companies. The appeal was simple. A SPAC let a private company reach public markets without sitting through the scrutiny of a traditional IPO, skipping most of the usual vetting. So the money rushed in. In 2020, 248 SPACs went public, raising about $83 billion in 2021 alone. That number exploded to 613 SPACs, raising more than $160 billion for one entire year. Blank check shells made up more than half of every new company hitting the U.S. stock market. And the story ends exactly the way you'd expect by now. Companies that completed a SPAC merger in 2021 lost an average of 67% of their value. The ones that finished merging in 2022 lost 59% on average. And just like after the dot-com crash, the moment the rug got pulled out from under everyone, the activity itself collapsed just as fast, from 613 SPACs in 2021 down to only 86 the following year. That's the Dine and Dash in full view, 3 separate times, in 3 completely different decades. When markets are booming, insiders rush to sell. When markets aren't booming, they quietly stop. It's not a conspiracy. It's not even unusual. It's just the most reliable pattern in the history of public markets. And if seeing it laid out like this clearly for the first time is worth something to you, subscribing costs you nothing and helps this actually reach the people who need to see it before the next one happens. So what about AI? There's still one question left hanging. Why now? Why are the most valuable companies in the world, fierce rivals who agree on almost nothing else, all racing to sell you stock at the exact same moment? It comes down to two numbers and the gap between them. The first is the spending. In 2026, the four largest hyperscale companies on Earth, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta, are on track to spend a combined $725 billion building out AI infrastructure, up 77% from roughly $410 billion the year before. It's the largest, fastest infrastructure build-out in recorded history, and most people can't actually picture how large $725 billion is. Here's one way to try. Spend $1 million a day, every single day, starting from the birth of Christ and running all the way through the fall of Rome, the Middle Ages, both world wars, and every day up to this morning. And you still wouldn't have spent what these four companies alone are spending on AI in a single year. Broken down, that's roughly $2 billion a day, $83 million an hour, about $23,000 every second, and it never stops. Now here's the second number, the one almost nobody puts next to the first. It's what all that spending has actually earned back. A research firm called Exponential View built the first real ground-up estimate of the entire AI economy. Every dollar of actual measured revenue, not projections. Over the trailing 12 months, the whole thing generated an estimated $110 billion, not profit, revenue. That's roughly 15% of what those four companies alone are spending this year on infrastructure meant to serve the entire industry. And it's not just an infrastructure problem. Deloitte surveyed more than 3,000 business leaders across 24 countries and found that 74% of organizations expect AI to grow their revenue, but only 20% have actually seen it happen. Researchers at MIT went even further, studying hundreds of real corporate AI rollouts, and found that 95% of them produced zero measurable financial return, hundreds of billions going in, almost nothing measurable coming back out. And the market has priced these companies as if that gap simply doesn't exist. Take OpenAI, the company sitting at the center of this entire wave. It's still private, but its financials leaked, and in June it filed confidentially to go public, so the real picture is finally visible. In 2025, OpenAI brought in $13.07 billion in revenue, more than triple what it made the year before. And before you say that's not bad, the company's net loss for that same year came in at $38.5 billion, nearly triple its revenue. To be fair, most of that specific number was a one-time accounting charge tied to converting from a nonprofit into a for-profit structure. The actual operating loss, cash going out the door to run the business, was closer to $21 billion, still a loss almost double the entire revenue. By its own internal estimates, OpenAI expects to burn well over $100 billion between now and 2029. And on top of all of that, its last funding round valued the company at $852 billion, more than 65 times its revenue. Here's the part that should make you slow down. A meaningful chunk of the money making these numbers look sustainable is what's now being called circular financing. Nvidia has committed up to $100 billion to OpenAI, and OpenAI, in turn, is committing to buy and deploy Nvidia's chips with it. Separately, OpenAI signed a $300 billion deal with Oracle to build data centers, and Oracle spends billions of that on Nvidia hardware. Money leaves Nvidia's balance sheet labeled investment, travels through two other companies, and comes back onto Nvidia's income statement labeled revenue. By 2026 estimates, well over $800 billion in AI deals now follow some version of this same loop. Michael Burry, the investor who famously called the 2008 housing crash years before it happened, has taken a large, publicly disclosed position betting against exactly this. His fund has put roughly $1.1 billion into short positions against Nvidia and Palantir, citing a 2026 report from the Bank for International Settlements on hidden leverage sitting inside AI infrastructure financing. Palantir's stock is down 35% since he built that position. And underneath all of it, the people running these companies are already moving. CoreWeave insiders sold $327 billion in stock in a single quarter this year, the largest quarter of insiders selling the company has ever had. Nvidia's own CEO and several other executives sold significant portions of their holdings in early 2026. Meanwhile, insider buying across the entire market sits near a 7-year low. When the people closest to the numbers are quietly heading for the door, that's not noise. That's the tell. There's a quote that might be the funniest, most honest thing anyone in finance has ever said on the record. Funnier, even than most jokes made on purpose. In the summer of 2007, months before the global financial system nearly collapsed, Charles Prince, then CEO of Citigroup, was asked about the bank's continued exposure to risky lending, even as credit markets were clearly starting to strain. His answer, given directly to the Financial Times, became one of the most quoted lines in the history of markets. When the music stops, in terms of liquidity, things will be complicated, but as long as the music is playing, you've got to get up and dance. He wasn't saying he believed the party would last. He was saying the opposite. He knew it wouldn't. He was saying that as long as the money kept flowing, he'd keep dancing anyway, because the moment it stopped, whoever was still standing on the floor would be the one left holding the loss. Underneath the dancing, it was really just a giant game of hot potato. And the only thing that mattered was making sure someone else was holding it when the music cut out. That's exactly what's happening right now, except the potato is stock in an AI company priced for a future where every single bet has to pay off perfectly for the price to make sense. So let's go back to the question this video opened with. If these really are the most valuable companies in the world and the future is as bright as everyone keeps promising, why are the people who know them best in such a hurry to sell? It's because it's the smart thing for them to do. They can see the gap between the price and the fundamentals as clearly as anyone. They're also in the middle of a genuine arms race that needs deep pockets to survive, which means whoever sells first gets to sell into the biggest, most enthusiastic crowd of buyers on earth, the public stock market. Nobody, including me, can tell you exactly when this gap closes. Nobody has a working stopwatch for a bubble. What you can do is read the room you're standing in, so you're not the last one to notice the music slowing down, which is exactly why a channel like this exists. If you want to see this same pattern from the other side, the story of the people who already made it to the exit quietly, years before the crowd even knew there was a door, watch our episode on the Goldman Sachs banker. It picks up almost exactly where the wealth in this video eventually ends up.